Hello, Refined Wilson here with a Vintage Cube playthrough. Starting off the draft with a Mana Crypt, easily top 10 card in the cube, passing up on Caracas and Atraxa. Pack 2 we have Umezawa's Jite is very good with Mana Crypt. I do consider taking it, but I end up taking the pre-war formal wear card from Fallout, and I've been very impressed with it as a card that brings back a small creature, very strong in white, and I've been very impressed with it. So I decided to jump right into white, very strong color. Pack 3, we have the options between a Marsh Flats and a Mind Stone or a Talisman, a blue. It's any of the 2 mana rocks works really well with Mana Crypt. But I decide to stick with white, and taking a Marsh Flats kind of keeps us open. Mana fixing is really great in the Vintage Cube. Pack 4, I see a Brainstorm, which is very strong blue card. Probably a lot of people compare it to Ancestral Recall when you have it with a fetch land, as you can shuffle away any cards that you do not want. So we take the Brainstorm, and this pack gives us options of Portable Hole, Wasteland, and Mana Leak. I decide to go with the Mana Leak. It's very good if we decide to go blue control, but it's still very good if we end up in a white weenie deck. This pack gives us the option of a Meticulous Archive or an Upheaval. Upheaval is a very, very strong card. Not quite as strong as a few years ago before the Modern Horizons cards came out, but it still offers a way to reset the game on your terms, and it goes well with a Mana Crypt, so we do take the Upheaval. This is a very late Show and Tell. There's also an Ulamog in the pack, which we would want to pair with our Show and Tell. There is a Thraben Inspector as well if we went the white weenie route, but I think on power level, Show and Tell is a bit better. Pack 8 brings us a Esper Sentinel, Godless Shrine, or a Mishra's Bauble. They can all be good in different situations. We're not really in black right now. Esper Sentinel is very, very good in the white weenie decks, but even if you're not, even if we end up in like a blue-white control deck, it's not a terrible card to have in our deck, as it taxes the opponent, causes a lot of issues. Here, the options are Wandering Emperor or Chromatic Star. I don't see any reason to move into the artifact builds, and we don't need the fixing. Some other good cards, Bristle Bill and Ren and 6, just not in our colors right now. We'll take an Enduring Curiosity here. We get a They Came from the Pipes. This is from the Commander set. It's pretty good, 5 mana. Enchantment, and you get to manifest twice, and then you get to draw 2 cards for manifesting twice. Again, it's not bad for 5 mana, getting 4 power of creature and drawing 2 cards. Here, there's a Kappa Cannoneer versus a Tropical Island. We're not too into the artifact theme yet, so we take a Tropical Island on the off chance we end up wanting to splash green. We don't have a clear direction into white. All we have so far is Esper Sentinel and pre-war formal wear. The Wandering Emperor, not quite what we want. Blightsteel Colossus is very good, very late to be getting something like that. Pairs very well with our show and tell. Let's go ahead with pack 2. Decent pack. There's an Oakish Bowmasters and Entomb, but Hullbreacher is much, much better because it's in our color. If Hullbreacher was not in this pack, I would actually consider playing black for the Bowmasters. It's probably better than most of our white cards, but for now we'll just take the Hullbreacher. This pack has Coalition Relic and Cryptic Command. Coalition Relic's very good to fix your colors. It's also very big mana ramp. It ramps you from on turn 3, and you can cast a 6-drop on turn 4. I do really like Cryptic Command. We're very heavy into blue. Having all those options is very strong. Ooh, this pack we have option of Urza Saga versus Chrome Mox. As tempting as Urza Saga is, we don't have very many targets for it currently. And Chrome Mox's fast mana is really important. So we'll take the Chrome Mox. This pack's not too exciting. There is the dual mode face cards, the Witch Enchanter or the Glimmer Lens. Glimmer Lens, I've been pretty impressed with as well. It's a 2-mana equipment, but it comes with a 2/2 attached to it. So getting 2 pieces of cardboard's very useful. But at this point, we're not quite sure if we want to be in white or not. We'll take the Trinome. This pack gives us a Containment Priest, a Staff of the Storyteller, and I think there's a lot of Reanimator and Show and Tell strategies in Cube, so I'm very happy to take the Containment Priest. We get a Stoneforge Mystic in this pack, which we don't have any big equipments as of yet. But now that we have the Stoneforge Mystic, we can prioritize them. Here is a very late Solitude and a very late Parallax Wave. I think this is a signal that white is open. And I'm pretty happy to take either. I end up taking the Solitude. I just think it offers so much more. It can be a turn 1 play. Here we get the Batterskull to pair with our Stoneforge Mystic. But Solitude is very good because it's good on turn 1 or 2 when the opponent plays a Ragavan or, a very threatening creature, whatever the case may be. But it's also good on turn 5 when you play it for value, killing their best creature, and you get a 3/2 lifelink. The Crabomination has tabled, as did Cathar Commando. I think we're going to take the Ghost Vacuum. It's another card that will help out of the sideboard versus any Reanimator strategies. The only white or blue card, there's no blue cards, but there's a Thalia. We'll take it in case we end up playing against any combo strategies. This is a very, very late Urza Saga. At this point, we will take it. We have Chrome Mox, Mana Crypt, and Esper Sentinel. The more I think about it, maybe I should have even taken it the first time around over the Chrome Mox, but I'm very happy to have tabled that. We've been very lucky tabling some very strong cards late. Here we have 2 equipment that we can play with our Stoneforge. I end up taking the Glimmer Lens for the reasons I talked about earlier, as it has a body attached to it on its own. So playing it as a 2-mana 2/2 doesn't feel terrible. Whereas Shadow Spear, if you don't have a creature to pair with it, it kind of has nothing to do. Here's 2 late white cards again. I've been impressed with both, but we kind of have a little bit of a token theme going on, and we'll take a last pick, Vindicate. And pack 3, we have Channel, Karn, Grim Monolith. I take the Karn here as we're a bit light on threats, and now that we have the Urza's Saga to pair with Karn, we can generate a bunch of constructs to win the game. Grim Monolith is very good. However, I find if you don't have any way to untap it or something very strong to push out in one turn, it doesn't really do much other than like a Black Lotus effect. Pack 2, we're going to take a Tundra. All right, this pack has a few options. Lion's Eye Diamond, Thopter Foundry, and Ephemerate, as well as Elspeth, and to an extent, Once Upon a Time. I'm not overly thrilled with any of these cards. Thopter Foundry does have a little bit of synergy, as we do have some token synergies with the staff and the squadron, Securion Squadron. Lion's Eye Diamond doesn't really help us. Maybe with an upheaval on the stack you could consider it, but outside of that we don't have any way to use it. Ephemerate can be very good with Solitude, but that's about it. So I take the Ephemerate with no real confidence, but I'm not sure if any of them would be played anyways. Here we have the decision of Trinket Mage or Talisman of Progress. Talisman is in our colors. However, Trinket Mage has the option to search for Chrome Mox or Mana Crypt, which just feels just as strong as Talisman of Progress. So it's just much better in our deck. Here we have an Ocelot Pride fairly late, and also a Tinker, which Tinker can search for our Blightsteel Colossus. It gives us a way to sacrifice Mana Crypt if it's going to kill us. I take the Tinker. We have Displacer Kitten versus a Mere Battlesphere. Mere Battlesphere, very good pickup since we just took a Tinker. So I'm fairly happy to get it. We put our Show and Tell in the sideboard. I'm not quite sure if we want it or not, just because we don't have anything that big on the high end. Here we have the option of Mystical Tutor versus a Steel Seraph. I think Mystical Tutor would have been better, as it searches for, whatever we need. We have Upheaval, we have Tinker, Cryptic Command, and Brainstorm. We have a lot of options on what to take. I end up taking the Steel Seraph as I feel we are fairly an aggressive deck. We have a lot of 2-drops that, generate creatures. At this point, we're kind of filling out our deck. We'll take I can never pronounce this card, Shikore. We'll take a Seachrome Coast out of the tabled pack. Very nice to get some dual lands. This is a very late Vaultborn Tyrant. But we'll take a Nexus of Becoming. It gives us another Tinker target, a possible Show and Tell target. We have a look at the research desk, but it doesn't seem like the card we'd want. We do have the Trinome to play the backside of it. We'll take the Thopter Foundry here. And at this point, we're going to end up taking some cards. We probably will not play. A Landwar Elf, that's fairly late. Another Landwar Elf, but we'll take the Displacer Kitten. And we'll finish off the draft with a Coveted Jewel. Not too bad a draft. We got a lot of powerful cards like Chrome Mox, Mana Crypt, Upheaval, and Urza's Saga. However, the deck feels a little bit unfocused. We have a bit of an aggressive token theme, but at the same time, we have the artifacts to make the constructs work. Here, I'm going to speed up my deck building process, but I basically look for cards to cut just because we're going to have too many cards. I take out all my mana sources, which includes Chrome Mox, Mana Crypt. I take out some cards that I think are more suited for the sideboard, like Containment Priest. And I take a close look at the deck once I'm at about the right number of cards. And I'll see, I'll have another look through. Cards like Gush don't really fit our theme. We don't have any ways to accelerate putting our lands into play. We'll sort by colors, and then we add the appropriate colors of lands. Once we have those, we take out any lands that we double check. We make sure we don't have any lands like Tropical Island that we don't want to play. And once we have a deck with a decent amount of creatures, some interaction, and I'm happy to get started with this deck. So we start round number 1. We have a decent hand with the ability to tinker. However, we don't have a white source for the staff, so we may have to consider playing the Urza Saga early, and instead we get a Chrome Mox, which allows us to go turn 1 staff by exiling the Wandering Emperor. And then this gives us the option to either create a construct on turn 2, or we could also just tinker on turn 2. If we create a construct, we're going to have 3 artifacts and then 4 by our 3rd turn, which is fairly powerful. We awkwardly draw our Blightsteel Colossus, which makes our Tinker much, much weaker. We just get in for the 1 damage. And at this point, we pass the turn with, we show that we could be playing a counterspell. Our opponent shows a miscalculation, which means had we gone for the Tinker, it would have been countered. We would have lost our artifact plus our Tinker. Opponent plays a Sylvan Caryatid. And we will pump out a token. They are tapped out except for an island and mountain. Making the token gives us a counter on our staff. And I'm just thinking about the Tinker. If we want to Tinker for something, or if we want to make another Urza's Saga token. So I think of my options. I drew a mana leak, which means if I search for the mana crypt with Urza Saga and I play the island, I will have counter magic backup. Because I don't have any white sources, I'm not able to use the staff to draw cards, despite having 3 counters on it. Now, the Urza Saga sacrifice, we get a mana crypt into play, and we can attack for 4. Very important that we have the 4 artifacts. That makes our constructs bigger than the Caryatid. So we pass the turn with mana leak available. We have 9 power in creatures. We have a staff that can draw cards if we require. We do need to use our white source, which we no longer have any white cards in our hand. Opponent plays a Caracas, which gives me a bit of a scare for a second, and I remember we have no legends in play. Blightsteel's not even a legend. And they pass the turn again with 5 mana, so we lose the flip, lose 3 life. We draw a plains, which gives me the green light to start drawing cards with our staff. We wouldn't be able to play the Enduring Curiosity and hold up Mana Leak, so we'll just get in for 8 damage. Sorry, 9 damage. And see what our opponents cast. It's a Boseiju on our Construct token. For a second, I think Tinker can sacrifice it in response, but Tinker is not an instant. That would be ridiculously broken. We let the Boseiju resolve. We'll take our Tundra, giving us a blue and white source. And awkwardly, now we can cast our Enduring Curiosity with Mana Leak open. So here's our post-combat Enduring Curiosity. Gives us another creature, more importantly than anything. And now we have the Mana Leak available to us. They didn't cast anything on 5 mana other than the Boseiju. I'm expecting them to have something here. They pay 2 life for the Godless Shrine, so for sure they have something that they want to cast for 6 mana. And they concede. So we'll move on to game 2. We're going to be on the draw, and this is a very weak hand, which I keep for some reason. Opponent starts out with a Avacyn's Pilgrim. I consider playing the Trinome, but I decide against it as I have way too many lands, and I may just want to cycle it. Opponent strip mines our Tundra, and they play a Talisman, putting us even further back. At this point, we play the Trinome, thinking, hey, if they're going to hit our lands, we might need to keep our lands now. The Chrome Mox doesn't really accelerate us unless we exile our Cryptic Command, which is very awkward as well. Mirror Battlesphere seems like an eternity away before we can cast it. Opponent plays a Kiora. That'll put total of 3 cards in their graveyard. And this further helps them, curate their hand to what they want. They get rid of Badlands, and the fungus from Foundations. We draw another land, and to add to my comedy of errors this game, I play the island, exiling Cryptic Command, and I try to play the Steel Seraph, which I can't because I don't have double white, because I didn't play the plains. So this game was just a bunch of baffling errors. It was a poor keep. Playing my lands, sequencing my lands improperly. And it just spirals out of control. Our opponent's deck actually does stuff this game, and we really can't come back from, getting strip mined, misplaying our lands, opponents playing a Nissa on turn 3, is it? Or 4 because of strip mine. Strip mine kind of sets us both back a turn. So effectively, this is turn 3 for the opponent, and we were on turn 2. We draw a useless Thopter Foundry. And this time we're able to cast the Steel Seraph, but I think I made so many errors I consider conceding. So once we got Steel Seraph into play, we have a 3/3 blocker, and our opponent Boseju's us. Grab a basic land, pass the turn. We have 2, 4, 5 mana up. If we can draw a Cryptic... Oh, wait. Cryptic Command's already in our hand. I'm just going to... Okay, back for game 3 after that disaster of a game 2. We have 4 lands, Brainstorm, Stoneforge Mystic, and Nexus of Becoming, which is not a bad hand. Nexus of Becoming's not great. We can shuffle it away with Brainstorm if we decide to. Opponent strip mines us, so we will go for that. Brainstorm, putting the Nexus on top, and then whatever card we put next, we're going to draw. So strip mine resolves. We're going to draw our Cryptic Command. We play the Marsh Flats to shuffle away the Nexus of Becoming. And I just do it on the main phase just so I don't forget. I really didn't want to mess up the turn and draw the Nexus of Becoming. We drew we did get a Hullbreacher off of the Brainstorm. I don't know if our opponents have any sort of card draw. We hadn't seen any in game 1 or 2. There was a Kiora, so it would be great if we could stop them from drawing 2 and then they must discard 2, on top of us getting 2 treasure tokens. We had to decide between playing the Batterskull or the Staff. But now that we drew the Mana Crypt, we're in a great situation where we have 5 mana available to us. And at this point, I think I hold up the Hullbreacher and the Stoneforge activation. And I do have the Cryptic Command if they play something that really, really requires a counterspell. But I'd much rather get ahead on board. Opponent plays a Talisman. And they pass. So from here, we're going to play the Hullbreacher first. it leaves our mana open, and then activating the Stoneforge can't be countered by a counterspell, although they don't have any blue. But this gives us 7 power into play immediately, on top of us having a counterspell in hand. So they Boseiju our Batterskull. Not great, but we'll take a land. Flip for our Mana Crypt. And we're in a situation where if we play our Curiosity, we don't have our Cryptic command open. But we do get to draw 2 cards, and we end up drawing a Mana Leak, which gives us something to counter them. I play the Island so I can cycle the Trinome if we do not Mana Leak. And our opponent's going to have 5 mana this turn, and we have to see if we want to counter what they do. So they play a Council's Judgment, and I kind of don't really care. I let it resolve. I let them pick. And whatever they pick with Council's Judgment, you must pick the same card. Otherwise, you're going to lose 2 as they're tied for votes. They play a tapped land, so we cycle our Trinome. Pre-formal wear doesn't get anything back currently, so doesn't really do much now. Drawing a basic plains. At this point, I want to play the staff. I'm trying to work out the exact how to tap my mana to leave a Cryptic command open. I could have drawn a card there, however, I decide to just pass the turn up. Now I can Cryptic command and Mana Leak with the 6 mana I have, but I have to do both on the same turn, because my Mana Crypt mana will not stick around. So here they play a Kiora. We're going to Cryptic command it. And I actually decide to, instead of tap draw or counter draw, I'm going to return their Lush Portico. So this does a few things. It sets them back a full turn because the land comes into play tapped again. And it also forces them to cast something this main phase, because if they want to use that mana. So they tapped it for a forest, for a green source. And they cast a Leyline Binding, which we're able to counter because we forced them to do it this turn, and we had the extra mana floating from the Mana Crypt. So now they're tapped out. We're going to swing in for a few points of damage. We draw Securitron Squadron, and I have to think about how I want to play out my turn. I swing for the 5 damage. Ultimately, I think if I play the Squadron, it feels like I'm overextending a bit too much. I end up drawing a card off of the staff. The Securitron Squadron would be really good to rebuild if they do cast a Wrath on us, as would the pre-war formal wear. In any case, I draw a card off the staff. I draw a Glimmer Lens, which helps we cast it, and we're able to put another counter on the staff. If I had drawn pre-combat, I could have re-equipped the Glimmer Lens and drawn an extra card. Here they play the Lush Portico again, and because of the Cryptic command bouncing it, we set them back that turn. So we win match number 1, and we move on to round 2. Get a good hand, Hullbreacher into and pre-war formal wear along with Mana Crypt. I think the only awkward thing is we can't play Hullbreacher turn 1 and Wandering Emperor turn 2 unless we draw exactly Tundra. Oh, we're on the play actually. So we'll start on Island Mana Crypt. And we'll pass the turn with Hullbreacher up. Maybe if the opponent casts a Ponder, we can steal a card from them. They go Forest, Mox, Lotus Petal, Fast Bond, play a land off Fast Bond, losing a life, Grim Monolith, sack the Petal for a red, Monolith, tap, Wheel of Fortune. So Hullbreacher absolutely wrecks the opponent here. They draw 0 cards. We create 7 treasure tokens, drawing 7 fresh cards. And we drew a Karn. This game is over. And we move on to game 2. But that is possibly one of the best Hullbreacher plays I've seen. And we have a pretty decent hand here. We have Trinome into Urza's Saga. We can either play a Glimmer Lens or hold up a Mana Leak. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have a ridiculous start like that one again, because we don't have the Hullbreacher. Opponent starts their turn, Island, Mox, of course, into Mindstone. A much tamer start from our opponent, but still pretty good. They have access to 4 mana on turn 2. At this point, we play out our Urza's Saga. And I'm pretty sure we hold up Mana Leak. Seeing as they've held up, they have 4 mana and they still haven't cast anything, it leaves me really suspect that they have something coming up. Possibly a Nissa. But instead, they sacrifice their Mind Stone, play a land. So they set themselves back to turn 3 again. So as we take our 3rd turn, we get a 2nd counter on Urza's Saga. We draw a Hullbreacher, which is really good for us because now we have a few options on what we do with our mana. We have the option to either Hullbreacher, Mana Leak, or we could just create a construct token. They now have 5 mana. They play Through the Breach, which we cannot let resolve. And we're going to Mana Leak it. We move to our turn, drawing a Plains. Here we end up making the construct token. We grab our Mana Crypt. And here we have to consider what we want to play out. I think we want to hold on to the Hullbreacher. It's still a 3-power creature, even if the opponent does not draw cards. We lose the flip. We draw a Blightsteel Colossus, which is not what we want to see in our hand. We're able to cast Nexus of Becoming now. And we'll tap 6, play the Nexus of Becoming, draws us an extra card. And we have to weigh out the options. Do we want to Trinket Mage as a 3/3 or Enduring Curiosity be able to draw more cards? At this point, I think I want the Trinket Mage to grab us a Chrome Mox, but opponent just concedes. We move on to round 3. We have a not the greatest hand. We do have Brainstorm to kind of help us here. We do have Staff on turn 2 as well to draw an additional card and see if we can smooth out our draw. Opponent plays a Manifold Key, a little bit scary depending on what artifacts they have. If they have like a Grim Monolith, it could be really bad news for us. They pass their second turn. We fortunately draw a land. And we can cast our Steel Seraph now that we have the white sources for it. And we get to gain some life. See what our opponent's third turn brings. Sensei's top. Spin the top. So I've noticed players have been playing Sensei's Divining Top very poorly, almost using it as a Sylvan library with a cumulative upkeep. They have to just pay mana every turn to look 2 cards deeper. We draw a Trinket Mage. And we have a couple options. We can either draw a card. We draw a card greedily, and we're rewarded with an island. Had we played the Trinket Mage, we wouldn't be able to draw a card off of the staff because we have no white cards to exile with the Chrome Mox. And Mana Crypt would not work either. Now we swing for 4, gaining 3 life. Casting Trinket Mage. We have to think about it, but we end up taking the Mana Crypt, and we're not going to play it yet because we don't want to lose life unnecessarily. Opponent plays Show and Tell. Thankfully, we have a Mere Battlesphere in our hand. So they get a sneak attack. We get a Mere Battlesphere. They put in a Triplicate Titan, which can attack right away for 9. And then once they sacrifice it, they're going to be left with 3 3/3s. We can't block that. So decent turn from the opponent there. Show and Tell into sneak attack. But we aren't in a terrible spot. We've gained some life already. And we do have a Battlesphere and 4 Mere tokens. So we draw a land, and we actually think for a little while because them having the 3 triplicate tokens is a bit difficult for us. However, we have Mana Crypt, we have Upheaval. We can set up a turn where we reset the board and we can play a Trinket Mage post-combat, which is pretty strong. And now we just have to think, how do we want to attack before we cast our Upheaval? So Steel Seraph, we're going to give the Battlesphere, and I think we have to consider if we want to give Flying to make sure it lives, or Life-linked to gain a bunch of life. So we end up going for Flying, and we attack with all of our flyers. They only have 1 flying token. With Mere Battlesphere, we use all 4 tokens, dealing an extra 4, making our Battlesphere an 8 power. So they decide to kill our Steel Seraph, and they go down to 2 life. Here we upheaval. We have not played our land yet for the turn. And now we can play Tundra, Mana Crypt, Trinket Mage, Trinket Mage is searching for a Mox. Play out the Mox. And we have to think about what card we want to imprint onto the Chrome Mox. I think I wanted to do the Staff, but we're not able to do it as it's an artifact. And we have exactly 7 cards in our hand. And we have a 2 power creature to their 2 life. Basically, this ends the game. And we move on to game 2. Game 2, we have a 2-land hand with a Chrome Mox on the draw. So Chrome Mox helps us catch back up at the cost of the extra card that you draw. Opponent starts on Mox Pearl into a top and no land. So we have to consider what land if we want to imprint Mox. We play out the Chrome Mox, imprint the Curiosity. At least this, at least representing a counterspell. Opponent goes for the upkeep top, which is required. I mean, if they're this short on lands that if they have no lands, they really got to dig for that 1 land. And they have to hope that they keep getting a land off the top. So Thundering Falls, you would think they would try to get rid of any card that's a non-land on top. But no, they keep a card on top. We pass the turn up with 3 mana. We have Brainstorm and we have Hullbreacher. If they activate the Sensei's top, we're in an amazing shape as we counter their draw with a Hullbreacher and we get a nice nifty treasure token. And they take their turn, see what they play. So they don't have a land, which really makes me question what they put on top with their Thundering Falls. Seems like a massive mistake. I don't know what card they kept, but it can't be correct. So here we're going to attack for 3. And we're going to Brainstorm because we haven't hit our land either. We draw a Tinker and a land, which is actually really good because we're going to put Blightsteel Colossus on top of our deck. Tinker. Search for the Blightsteel Colossus. And our opponent's stuck on 2 lands, and we have an 11/11 Infect. Opponent forgets to top on our end step, so they end up using the top on their upkeep, further restricting their mana, and they concede, and we get the trophy. So, this was our Vintage Cube draft. Went really well, and thanks for watching. Please follow.